All right, so thank you very much for joining me, Kyle. Big fan, long time friend, and everything. It's just great to be able to hang out and catch up with you. So, if you don't mind, introduce yourself and your channel, please.
Yeah, hi, I'm Kyle from No Hype Beer Reviews. Been doing the channel for I think like 3.5 years at this point. Still love doing it. I keep it pretty beer review related. I don't do too many editorials or things like that, but I do like, doing some live streams and things like this. So yeah, I'm really excited, Anthony. Thanks for having me.
So, could you just explain what no hype in your channel name, what that means?
Yeah, that's a common question. It's a good question. For me, it's two different things. It's I either want to review beer that has no hype to it, and a lot of people like to make fun of me like that's the only thing I'm supposed to be doing. But the other side of it is if I am reviewing a beer that has hype, to really try not like to try to not let that affect my thoughts on it. Like, wait, I'm supposed to love this beer. Everyone's loving this beer. So to really try my best to go in just like this is just like any other beer and not let it affect me and what I think of it. So yeah, and you know what? I've skewed probably more hyped beer, trying to not have the hype with it. But I am trying to make a conscious effort, do more local beers, maybe more easily accessible ones, and that's been a lot of fun.
Yeah, hype is something that I've been like dwelling on recently. So I moved to Germany not too long ago, and the culture is just so different out here when it comes to beer. It's a lot more casual. People like they're not really like knocking down brewery doors like trying to get the exclusive bottles. They'll just kind of show up and grab it and move on about their day, even if it is like a special hype release or whatever. But it's just different. So when it comes to deciding those beers like that you're going to do on your channel, are you I know you said that you don't actively seek them out, but are you kind of like tempted sometimes to like, do you kind of like give in to the hype a little bit?
Yeah, I mean, I definitely am. Whether it's good or bad, I do like the ticking kind of a thing. Like, oh, I had another new beer. I get to, have that new life experience. And before I did the channel, I did revisit beer more often, or beers more often, or maybe was more inclined to buy like a 6 pack of something versus just one to review. So I try to put out a video a day, and I also try not to drink more than a beer a day. So it does cut into like, well, I could review Dogfish Head 60 Minute once and then not post anything for 5 more days, or review it every day for 60, like so it's tough to kind of like I'm trying to find a healthier balance with that while still being like physically healthy as well. um I started
That
doing
is
a
a hard
couple.
balance.
What's up?
I said that is a hard balance.
It is. It really is a hard balance. Yeah, and like when COVID hit, I gained like 5 more pounds. I had already gained weight, so I was like, nope. So I'm doing good now. I'm down 30. I got to get down a little bit more, but I'm feeling good. But anyway, that's a whole other. We can talk about that too, I'm sure. But back to the hype thing. Yeah, I've done a couple things. I really try not to overly structure my channel, but I have started doing two things. Tuesdays, I really try to post a video where I'm testing my palate, maybe a style I don't drink a lot of or something that's unique. So it's either it might be a common style, just one I haven't had in a while or ever had or whatever. And then on Saturday, that's actually what I'm drinking now. On Saturdays, I try to post something from my beer cellar. So I'm not just like collecting more and more beer, like actually like once a week drink one of those beers. And between those two things, and also just trying to do a little bit more local, some maybe things that aren't so hyped with that hype stuff, just a healthier balance all around. Yeah.
Oh yeah, I think that's kind of you hit on two things that I think a lot of people who want to get into beer reviews on YouTube and stuff like that, I don't think they anticipate these two things. One, they're probably going to gain a little bit of weight, especially if they're trying to do that daily upload schedule that many beer reviewers try to do. But two, that backlog in the cellar,
Yeah.
it grows quickly. I mean, sometimes I felt like a hoarder. I still do.
It's so true. The hoarder thing is so true. I heard someone call it like it almost just becomes wallpaper. Like and for me, like I typically do my reviews in front of my beer cellar, and it's like, yeah, I don't want this to just be wallpaper. I want these to be things that I enjoy, because that's why I bought them. So yeah, no, I don't want to be a hoarder. But I like aging beer too. So like I want again that healthy balance where I am still doing that experiment of aging things, but where I'm not just letting it sit and collect dust because it looks cool or whatever. Yeah, no, for sure.
Yeah, I mean, and beer does have like, trying to choose the words carefully. It does have a somewhat shelf life, like you can age it forever, in the right conditions and stuff, but it's going to change. So I know you do the, seller reviews and everything, and those are incredibly interesting to watch, especially if they're one that I've had when they were fresher and everything, and seeing how they evolved and changed. Do you see integrity is not the right answer, but do you ever feel any type of frustration when it comes to like I want to do this fresh and I want to see what it tastes like? Like have you ever had a situation where you're like, oh, I wish I would have drank this like as soon as I got it because maybe it fell off or something like that?
Yeah, like in a perfect world, if I was more on top of this and regimented about it, I would always do a fresh review of a beer and then years later re-review it, maybe like post a link like if you want to watch my early review of this when it was fresh versus what I think of it all these years later. It's definitely something I've enjoyed doing like off camera. I've done that plenty, and maybe a couple of times on camera and I think about it. But back like going to bottle shares or things like that was kind of cool. If people like one time it was Christmas time and I brought I think it was like 6 years worth of Trogs Mad Elves. But like it was because those are high alcohol beers, so it was nice to like bring it to a share and split them. And it was like really cool to do that. For me to do that on camera is a completely other beast. Whether I do one a day or just I can't cap all those and try to drink up before they're spoiled. So it's either a lot of dumping, which I don't want to do, or something like that. But yeah, definitely done some cool stuff off camera that way. Yeah, but on camera, less of that. But yeah, like if someone was to get into aging beer, like you want to get at least two of those beers. Drink one fresh, whether put maybe take some notes on Untapped, a piece of paper, whatever, and then yeah, compare them years later. Yeah, I mean this is what I'm drinking now. I said it in my review. Like it's still delicious. I don't know if it's past its peak though. It's an old Rasputin barrel aged one.
Ooh, sexy beer.
Yeah, oh yeah, and yeah. I mean, it's delicious, but it's hard for me to say because I haven't had it in 6 years. Is it any better or worse than fresh? And that is a missing component.
Yeah, and when you throw in I mean, it's batch dependent, age dependent, and then vintage dependent. There's like so many variables that go into it. And this is bringing up some weird anxieties I had back when I did beer reviews.
Yeah, and yeah, it's something that I remember. Like I talked to the Nerd Sense guys, and we've actually the four of us have done a thing. It was a while ago. I think about it, but when you pivoted, it was kind of cool because like I still like doing the beer reviews, but I get the difference of that grind versus trying to pivot to do more like this or the beer news or things like that. And I could see why. I'm coming up on my 1,000th review, so like I get it. Like it is a thing, but I'm still enjoying it. I haven't wanted to pivot, but I totally understand someone
Yeah,
pivot.
that is that is I think the most important part is that you're still enjoying it. Like somebody told me, completely unrelated to beer, a long time ago, it's like when something's not fun anymore, you got to go, because I mean it's not worth it to waste time in. But I every time I watch one of your videos, it still seems like you're going strong. You seem motivated. So how did you first get into doing beer reviews? Like what was your inspiration, your journey?
No, yeah, that's a cool question. Yeah, I at the time I was living alone, so I'll use the Dogfish Head 60 minute. So like maybe I bought a 6 pack of that, had one, I like it. As I'm like getting more and more into beer, like okay, so what are some of these flavors? How can I describe them and process what I'm tasting? So I just started looking up, and then I found, oh yeah, there's people on YouTube who review these kinds of beers. Maybe I'll drink my next one and watch a review of it. Actually, I watched one of your more recent videos. Shoot, what's his name from Better Beer Authority?
Oh yeah, James Knott.
James, yeah. Like he was one of the channels I would watch. And it's like, okay, that's okay. So that's the thing. Maybe I'm having a hard time articulating that I'm tasting. And again, like talking about like bottle shares and stuff, I would have similar experiences there. But so that's what made me aware of it as like a thing. And I'm a teacher, so like I do like explain things for a living. So it did kind of seem like maybe I could combine these two things and explain what I'm experiencing, good or bad, what's getting me excited about it, not excited, what things I'm, tasting, smelling. And it always sounds like a knock. He hasn't been doing many beer reviews. Speaking of pivoting, he's pivoted more towards like doing like hip hop album reviews. But Chauncey from All Things Beer 510 has rebranded his channel's name. But like, and it sounds like an insult. But like, I was watching some of his videos. I'm just like, I could do this, and it wasn't like belittling to him. It was just like his low key kind of an edge, just kind of doing. And then he'd get excited sometimes, and he'd be back down, just kind of chill vibe. And I'm like, oh yeah, I could do that. So I filmed 3 practice ones, which I have slowly released on my channel.
I've enjoyed watching those.
It's a trip. It's a big trip. Yeah, I mean, it's definitely a trip for me and anyone who's probably watched my more recent videos to see like, I'm like this close to the camera, like, hey, I'm not sure if I'm going to do this or not, but like, here's the beer review. Yeah, like it's just so funny to look back on, again, like 3.5 years ago. But yeah, and it just, got into it. And that's the thing, you know what? You see a lot of people start channels, and I think people think you're just going to ascend. It is such a slow growth. This is not, one of those hot markets on YouTube. And you just, you see people like, and I'm not judging anyone, but you see people like out the gate, they got the Patreon, they're selling merch. It's like, you posted a video, man. Like, okay. But, and then they give up, and it's just like, yeah, I mean, you got to do it. Like you were saying, like, cause you like doing it. This is not, you're not an attractive woman doing, makeup that might have, a certain niche that's larger than this niche, or like live streaming video games or whatever. Like there are niches that seem to get a bigger audience inherently. This is not a big audience game, and
it's really not. I mean, I'm not saying like I deserve a bunch of subscribers or whatever, but it has been a slow grind, and I'm happy for every single sub I get, but when I first started, I certainly thought it would have been faster,
Oh yeah, no, I mean it's very. I mean, like I said, I'm about up to 1,000 reviews, and I'm happy if I get like 1 sub per review, and I'm ahead of that number. But yeah, I mean it's not some astronomical growth, it's slow.
Well, so when you compare your channel to a lot of other beer reviewers, one who were around before you, started at the same time as you, and are starting up now, your channel actually grew pretty fast, like relatively speaking. Yeah, for sure. Like, I don't think anyone in the beer YouTube scene is putting up, beauty tutorial or gaming numbers, but
yeah.
I mean, you shot up pretty quickly. Like, what do you think it is about your channel that resonates with people?
No, yeah, it's a good question. And I've talked to some of the other people who do it, and I some people think it's because I don't swear in my videos. So like, I'm not maybe off-putting to anyone. And it's only because I swear a lot actually in my real life, but just because I am a teacher, if students found these videos, I wouldn't lose my job, but I don't need a kid compiling me saying the F word, like I don't need that in my life. So that's the reason I keep them clean. But like there's definitely people who've mentioned that to me, like perhaps because it's clean, so like someone could watch it in front of their kids, or someone who doesn't like swearing is not offended by anything you say. I've had some people who English is not their first language, and apparently the way I talk is relatively slow and low and easy to understand if they're like a second, English is a second language person. I do have a decent number of people who watch me in other countries. The United States is still, I mean, like 80 something percent, but like a decent number who are, I think English as a second or third language. I don't know. Yeah, I don't know.
Being clean certainly helps with the algorithm, right? Like the whole YouTube projecting you thing. That could be like, I mean, something as simple as just, I mean, one, I do think you're a likable, charismatic guy, but like you can be likable and charismatic all you want, but that's not going to get YouTube to push you, So you kind of got to play the cards. You got to be your authentic self. You got to play the algorithm. You got to, be likable. And regardless, I think your channel is definitely fascinating in a statistic standpoint, because like every now and then I'll flip through some of my favorite beer channels and look, and I'm just always impressed at, like, if you look at your Social Blade, I mean, there was like probably like a year ago, I mean, you just like shot up.
Yeah, it's and I think it's going to happen again. Well, what happened last year, it was I had gotten my hands on all of the Goose Island Bourbon County variants. So I think that was a big one. And then last November, and I've done it before, I've done like a no buy November where I just drank from my cellar. And it really helped me because Joe from Jow's Arcade did it himself. And like in every video, he's like, this is no hype beer reviews idea. So I think that, those two things together. And then I've had a couple other peaks. The sad side of this, and I know you and I are on the same side of this because I know you post a video. When I do Black is Beautiful beers, I lose subs or I don't, or I lose and then gain one. So it's a net, gain of 0. So I've been doing about one of those a week. And I'm not trying to get political with this, but like, my wife's Black, my kids are biracial. So like, I care way more about, that than I do subs. But like, it's just this sad thing where it's like, oh man, like I had like, 4 people a day subbing, and then I started doing this and I'm getting like maybe 4 a week.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up. That was something I was gonna actually try to talk to you about separately from this, but this flows perfectly. So I'm actually currently working on documenting the entire journey of the Black is Beautiful initiative, I think is the terminology that they use for it at Withered Souls. And definitely you are the one pumping out the most. When it first started, I put out a little video that was just like briefly covering it because I wanted to make sure people know this is where I stand, right?
Yeah.
So, I mean, you kind of answered my question. I was going to ask what about it, really speaks to you and everything, but I 100% agree. When I posted that one video, I dropped like 4 to 6 subs in just a day. And I mean, me personally, fuck them, I don't care.
See you later. Yeah.
I'm not, this isn't my job. And even if it was, I don't think I would be pandering to you anyway. But like, if you have a problem with that, like, bye, I don't care.
Yeah. It's really interesting for me. Maybe I'm like more objective than the average person. I don't know, but like, I don't view that as some radical thing. And I don't know why you would, and I come from like a law enforcement family. So like when people talk about, well, like you're anti-police or whatever, it's like, I'm not. I actually almost became a police officer. I either was going to be a police officer or a teacher. My sister's a police officer. My dad's a federal agent. Like I'm in a very pro law enforcement family. I said, I don't see how these things are mutually exclusive either, which is something that it's so interesting to me. Again, not to get overly political, but like, I think you're just trying to be on the right side of history. And I don't think that means you're vilifying, like, I don't think my sister's a bad person, but I do think like this is how it boils down to me. Someone could be a good person or a bad person regardless of their profession. And I don't think anyone should get a free pass. And I don't think anyone is overly evil either. And I don't see how that's controversial, but some people think that's controversial. But yeah, no, I mean, it is what it is. And, I still have a bunch to review, which I'm excited about. And I'm, and people who want to be on the journey, cool. And people are not, recently, just back to, actually, we're going to marry two questions with an answer. Someone kind of said, I'm kind of like the Mr. Rogers of beer reviews. But like, you know what? Even Mr. Rogers took a stand on, racial inequality in America. So apparently I can do both of those. And I'm not the only person doing this. I mean, again, Anthony, you did this yourself, and other beer people are totally doing this thing. But it was just kind of a funny, like, oh yeah, you're very. It's like watching like my neighbor, like it's like watching you do a beer review is kind of like me having a beer with my neighbor. And then was one comment from Mike from Nerd Sense, and someone else independent of him was like, yeah, it's kind of like the Mr. Rogers, which is whatever it is. It's a weird thing to say, but yeah, like I think you can have all of these, things at one time, and it doesn't seem radical to me. I don't know.
So going back to this whole conversation is going to be sporadically injected with questions regarding around hype, just because you just seem like the best person to talk to about
that's
that.
awesome. No, it's great. It's totally cool with me.
Okay, when you are doing, going through choosing whether a beer is, hyped up, crazy, whatever, or more like a shelfie beer, do you notice a change in your analytics in regards to views and watch time?
Not to keep mentioning Nerd Sense, I just talked to those guys a lot. I literally, I don't know, 2 hours ago was talking to them about that. Sean from Nerd Sense had posted a couple videos this week, and it got the conversation going. And he literally said, like, it seems like people only care about hyped videos, like hyped beers. Like if they have easy access to Trillium, so if it's like a new Trillium beer, they get it, they review it, they post it, big numbers for them, right? And then I said, yeah, it's that or a shelfie beer that a lot of people, and it kind of makes sense. It's what's in people's in their mind, right? So a lot of people can get this beer, and then maybe they're interested. They do a Google search, your little video thumbnail pops up. They're like, oh, cool, someone, I didn't know there was videos of this, and they watch it. Or yeah, it's like, whoa, Trillium released a new whatever, double fruited sour, and cans are bursting. That's crazy. Let's, see if anyone has a video of it, And that was a very recent uptick I had. Was there's a local brewery to me who had partnered with Warheads to do Warhead sours, and I got the release, and it wasn't that big of a deal locally. I mean, it was like cool, and I know the owner a little bit, so like we had been talking about it, and that was cool. And I did a video kind of explaining them, and then I reviewed all of them, and they did fine. They were fine, and then they got so much social media attention that they started being able to distribute a little bit more. They distributed they had only been very local, or maybe a little bit inside New York. Then they did some like New Jersey, Massachusetts. All of a sudden, my analytics are blowing up for these videos. So I send the owner a text, and I'm like, what's up? And then he's like, oh, we just hit Los Angeles market. So because of the large market, because of social media, not to overgeneralize a place like LA, but they probably are very much like social media, try to be influencer kind of a culture. They're going to Google, artisanal Warheads beer, me, and a couple, and another guy, Joe from the Beer Patrol, had reviewed all those beers. So, now I'm getting thousands of views on a couple of them. He's getting thousands of views on a couple of his. And it's like, if I get like 50 views, I'm happy. So like getting like 5,000 is like, what just happened? So
it's always the videos you don't expect that kind of explode.
A local brewery that partnered with Warheads, like I did not expect. I figured I'd get a little uptick because then I'll post it like in local beer groups, like, hey, if anyone wants to see my local beer review. But I did not think, I thought, maybe low 100s, not like 5,000. No, that was really shocking. But yeah, I hope I answered the question. Yeah.
Oh, for sure. So do you think there is a magical, like, so there's like, sweet, sour, salty, savory, whatever. Do you think hype is a driving flavor factor? Do you think that influences people's thoughts and opinions on beer?
Yes. I mean, perception is everything to people. Perception is everything.
Yeah.
And I've been, again, it is a focus of, I don't know if it comes across or not, but it is a focus of mine. If I do have some beer that I know is hyped, I really try not to oversell it unless I honestly think it's like a really good beer. But like when you hear that, or like you see that, I should say, you see the people are talking about it, you see a bunch of people are trying to trade for it or whatever, and then it's like, all right, yeah, this is supposed to be, the most important beer of the week or whatever, and I will say this, sometimes, there's hype for a good reason. Like it really is a solid release. and then and I think that probably is the majority of it, but there are definitely plenty of releases that for whatever reason they're hyped and it's not actually like a good beer. It's just maybe like two hyped breweries that are like actually, here's probably an easy way to like make this point. Collabs. A lot of collabs aren't as good as the individual breweries beers because they've like honed in recipes. So like you might have like two breweries that like you think are amazing and you're like so excited when the two of them come together, like this is going to be two times as good as every beer that these guys make independently because they're channeling both of their brain powers. But then it's like no, they either like tweaked an existing recipe or like sometimes maybe they take like a recipe they each have and mash it together, or they're just like yeah, we have a bunch of these hops, let's just do another double IPA and we'll just say we did a collab, versus like the years of batches and small batches and trial at the tap room. And then, okay, the customers seem to like this version the best. Now let's mass produce it, So like, I think collabs is the easiest way to see where hype doesn't live up. But there are, to be fair, if a lot of people are talking about a beer, it's a good chance it's actually a good beer, but it does not mean it definitely will be a good beer.
For sure. There's a big disconnect, I think, between consumers, producers, and I did some research into collabs a while back, and a lot of people would, I think, be surprised to find out that most collabs are pretty much done over like email. Yep. Very few of them are done like in person, and it's not like some great meeting of the minds, forming a dragon zord type, brewing god or whatever. It's literally like, it seems like our demographics cross over. You want to capitalize, So I never really thought about that aspect of the time and effort it takes to refine, a everyday fine on the shelf type beer that's been around for decades, small tweaks here and there, versus, objectively speaking, you could honestly say that a lot of these, or I guess I shouldn't say that, but subjectively, there's you could argue that like a shelfie could be a better beer,
for sure.
But even if it doesn't have that driving hype behind it, sure. Are you a big chaser? Like, do you chase after like releases? Not necessarily for your channel, but just like you and your personal drinking life.
I don't think I fit that. I don't go to a lot of. I mean, and even pre-COVID, like I don't think I went to a lot of like hyped releases and stood in line. Like I have stood in line. I mean, I'm not gonna act like I haven't done something like that, but it wasn't like a weekly occurrence where I'm driving to each, within like 6 hours of me. I'm not driving every weekend to try to get the most hyped either. I mean, if there is beer that I am really interested in, I might try to trade for it or whatever. But and like I mentioned with the doing the Bourbon County releases, like I do try to do a lot of craft beer, but like I really like what they do. So I do, when it's this time of year, I do try to get, the AB and Bev Goose Island, AB and Bev owned Goose Island Bourbon County and all the variants that I can. So I guess I do arguably chase those, to be fair. But I wouldn't. Besides that, I don't think. I don't know. Maybe other people would disagree. I don't think I'm that guy, though.
Yeah, I don't care what anybody says. Bourbon County, that's some good beer. That's good beer.
It's delicious.
Yeah,
they not. It's delicious.
Even what was it, like 2015 or 16, the infected batch? Yeah, I mean, even the like sour one, it was all right.
It wasn't bad. I still have one I'll review at some point. And actually, that vintage, the non-soured regular ones, are like one of the best vintages I've ever had, and they hold up really well.
Yeah. The barley wine from that vintage is probably one of my favorite beers of all time. 2015 really? Bourbon County barley wine. Oh man, that was. I still dream about that beer. Like legit, that was probably top 10 beer of all time for me.
Yeah, that's a good example because like whenever a year later, 2 years later, they did the barley wine with coffee, and I hated that beer. So like I think that's a good example of me really trying to like 'cause I do hype those releases in my mind. I try not to, but it happens. And that was one of those ones where I'm like, nope, like this is not a good beer at all. I ended up doing a video like why I drink Bourbon County, and like in this world of craft beer again, which I do value, and I want to support local businesses and I want to support small businesses. I am all about that. I don't typically eat too much of like chain restaurants and stuff, but like, all right, so if I have a beer a day all year and seven of those are InBev products, it's a pretty good percentage of me supporting local and or craft brew. And like, I don't shop at Walmart much, but every once in a while, like I have to go to Walmart for a thing that I can't get somewhere else. Like to me, it's kind of like that. Like it's not my everyday beer, but they do have some good beers, and I don't feel too guilty drinking from them. Just like I don't think you should feel too guilty if you shop at Walmart sometimes or Target or whatever versus a local mom and pop. Like we do live in a world where you can shop small, and I do try to do that, but sometimes you have to shop elsewhere. And for something like a Bourbon County, I mean, I'm drinking a very delicious barrel aged beer, stout specifically, but this beer is different than theirs, and I do like theirs, so I'm going to buy that. But some people get very militant about that. I think it's a silly thing to be militant about, but
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. When I think about Bourbon County, I think about Wicked Weed. Like everyone remembers when Wicked Weed sold out, it was like this big whole commotion and everything. And I won't lie, at that point in time, I was kind of like a craft beer zealot, and I was like, Wicked Weed, whatever. I mean, that didn't stop me from drinking it. It didn't make their beers not good, and
yes.
like just because they got bought out doesn't mean that they're not making good beer. Like, I mean, they're still one of my favorite. If I'm ever like on the East Coast, going through North Carolina, Wicked Weed is one of my favorite places to stop at. It's great, and Bourbon County is the same way. So I mean, I don't see what people get so riled up about, but whatever.
That's their journey. That's fine. Being angry makes them happy. That's on them. That's great.
Yeah. Yeah, so I think that's important what you do, not just like trying to keep a calm, level, mellow head about beers, even if there is some like Instagram prestige behind it or whatever, but there needs to be honest brokers in the beer review community. When I was talking with James from Better Beer Authority, one of the things we kind of briefly dipped into, which was fascinating, was he was like, he's working with a brewery now, and he's like, we pay close attention to the YouTube Beerscape because they see, like, I mean, he has firsthand experience knowing what that relationship between reviewer and brewer is, right? So they pay attention to that and they try to focus on that. And if beer reviewers aren't liking it, if they're getting negative feedback and everything, they're going to tweak and work their business plans, their recipes, whatever. And again, I'm going to take your stance here, not call anybody out, but I watch a lot of people, and I think there's a lot of people who are afraid to take a dissenting opinion or are afraid to call out a brewery and say, oh, this isn't great, or, it's not, it doesn't live up to the hype. I feel like a lot of people, they're trying to build that YouTube community where, or not only that, but trying to like kiss the asses of breweries and be like, oh, look at me, I'm favorable to you, like, how are you going to scratch my back? That type thing, So I think what you do is important. I said it earlier, but I do feel a little disenchanted with the beer reviewing community because I have seen a lot of people compromising their integrity, for AdSense or, views or whatever. So I I think that's one of the reasons, like, apart from, the conversations we've had in the past and, hanging out collabs and stuff like that. I think that's the part that makes me a fan of your channel.
No, thanks. No, I appreciate because I think integrity is very important. I think, like I said, being a teacher, like sometimes we don't give young people a lot of credit. Like they can spot a phony, So like I have to be authentic all the time, or they're going to see right through me. And I do think that translates to my videos for sure. Um, I won't name names, but like there's a beer reviewer who was not being sent free beer from a brewery and got some of those beers and rated them very harshly. And then that same brewery started sending them free beer, and now they're all 95 out of 100 scores. And it's such a coincidence that these beers are so much tastier to
Just
that
changed.
person, you know. And then that same brewery, they make really delicious beer. And if anything, I try to be a little harder on them because it could be like this perception where like, oh, you're just because they sent it to you, so of course you like it because you want to. No, it's like the owner straight up said like Untapped isn't very helpful to us because people typically just put numbers or the number is like a 0.5 because they don't like the style, and it's like, well, I don't rate it 0.5 because it makes it look like this is not a good beer, but it's because you don't like the style of beer. Whereas with the beer reviews, they like it because it's more thorough. You're trying to actually analyze the beer, what's working, what's not working, what works together, what tasting notes are the tasting notes, people are getting. I had a local a brewery. I didn't get it for free. I went and I bought it, and it was during COVID, like when people weren't going out at all, and they're like, and not that we're doing much in New York State right now anyway, but they sent me a message. They're like, you know what, we miss because they're a newer brewery. They're like, we miss the tasting room experience where we got to talk to customers and they would tell us like good and bad about the beer. So like it was so refreshing to them that for like 8 minutes, like I talked about that beer from that brewery. So this one that I'm thinking about that sends out a lot of beer for beer reviews, they want that in-depth analysis, and that's why they send out so much, or like I did a recent review where, and I said it, I'm like, I think this is a good beer. It's good. It's not, it was a coffee IPA. I'm like, I don't think this is going to be the new, I don't think this is so amazing. Like every brewery, like the brew IPA had that uptick of people were like, oh, this is a thing. I don't think coffee IPAs are going to have this huge uptick because of this beer or other beers like it, but it also wasn't a bad beer. It just, I almost always would rather have a regular IPA, but every once in a while I want something different, and that scratched that itch. So yeah, like that was very honest. Like I didn't say like I didn't love the beer. I thought it was a good beer. It wasn't great. It wasn't amazing. I didn't say like go get this beer no matter what. So even though it was sent to me, to me that is honest. I'm like, yeah, it's good. It's different, which I want something because you drink so many of one style, it does get a little annoying to review it where like, especially like IPAs where it's like, oh yeah, I get, here's like the same five things. Which are the four of the five things am I going to say? Like, oh yeah, I get orange in this one. Well, yeah, I almost always say that because IPAs kick out. Yeah, I mean, it kicks out certain. So I'm like, you know what? This is cool about the beer. It's not upping the beer 20% better, but like it's different and it works and that's cool. It's like more of a cool experience than like mind blowing. But whether I get a beer sent from a brewery or someone who watches a channel, or if it's a trade or I buy it, yeah, I do want the same level of integrity for sure, and I'm not perfect, no one is, but I really, I do, I try to be, and recently I've gotten a couple more home brews, and those people straight up, they're like, don't go easy. Like the polite thing might seem to be like, oh yeah, this is great, good job, buddy. But like, no, like I want to get better at my craft. So like, if there are imperfections, please note them. If there are things you like about it, please note it. Like, it's like, oh yeah, wait, that's what the other breweries want too. Is they want that feedback. They don't want just a score on Untapped, and it's you'd be doing a disservice to yourself, the audience, and the people who are interested in their product being better to lie.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, just anecdotally speaking, I took a homebrewed beer, and it was a weird style. It was a German Lichtenheiner, which is a smoked sour, right? And I Americanized it, so it's like really sour. And I used peat smoke instead of like beechwood, and so it was just a weird fucking beer, right? And like I took it to a bottle share, like a pretty big one at the Foothills Sexual Chocolate release, and I some of my friends were there. They drank it and they were like, "Oh, it's good" or whatever. And there was this one guy who was like, "This is fucking awful," and I was like, "That was the guy I wanted to talk to." Let me know what's wrong with it. Like, I get it's a weird combination, but like, can we talk about like, am I bad at hopping, or is my attenuation off or whatever? Like, it is criticism that really helps improve brewers. It helps improve their businesses. Whether or not they're receptive to that is a different story. But like, I think that's a significant part of the weird market that is beer reviewing slash consumerism. I mean, you're not Yelp, but you have 1,500 followers who are listening to you. I mean, you do drive, like, I mean, it might not like sink them, but like, I mean,
It's a sliver, but yeah,
it's important. So we were talking a little bit about being an honest broker, and how important and significant to the actual industry it can be. So I do have a question. I love hearing people's responses to this. Have you ever had any kickback or pushback from a brewery for something negative or anything that you've said?
No, you know what? I haven't. I've heard other people talk about this. I've never gotten like a nasty email or DM on Instagram. I haven't gotten anything. And I do, I mentioned, sorry, my dog's making a bunch of noise.
No worries, no worries.
um, I have, yeah, I've heard that from other people that happened to them. Um, I, it's an interesting level. I try to be positive while being real, so maybe
That's
that,
hard to do sometimes.
it is right. Like, I mean, there's been some beers I review where it's just like, yeah, this is just bad. Like, it just, there's no redeemable qualities. I had mentioned like the Bourbon County, coffee barley wine. Like, to me, there's no redeemable quality about that beer. But I do try to be positive. Like, okay, here's what I do like about the beer. Like, yeah, this is good. Like, here's what is good about it. Here's what I would love to not be tasting right now, or whatever, right? But like, not unnecessarily be harsh either. But no, it's never for me, or maybe I just get these DMs lost. I don't know, but yeah, it has not happened.
Nah, you're lucky. So I always just kind of blew them off, but I've had breweries reach out to me, and I would say the majority of them are nice and are respectful, and I mean, because I mean, I think they understand like taste is subjective, and like, you know, one of my favorite breweries, Good People Brewing out of Birmingham, Alabama. They're my hometown brewery, and probably one of my favorite beers of all time is their El Gordo beer. It's a big stout. And I was like, oh my God, in my review, I was like, oh my God, it's so good. I can taste the barrel coming through. It's bourbony, it's vanilla. And they're like, yo, no bourbon barrels. And and I was like, well, I think that to me just speaks like how fucking like perfect your high alcohol blended and everything. So I mean, they were cool about it, super nice. Then I've had other breweries. What was that brewery in California? The Golden Road, Golden
Yeah,
Camp, or whatever.
I think it's Golden Road, Golden Rod, Golden Road.
Yeah,
Yeah,
whatever. The one who basically started a brewery just to perfect, like with the sole intention of selling to AB InBev.
yeah.
That's a good idea for a video, actually. They had like a lemon wheat beer or whatever, and I was like, I don't really like it. It tastes cleaning producty to me, and they fucking blasted my emails. Just you're wrong. These are like the prime lemons from this region and all this. I was like, oh God. I mean, they were mad.
That's pathetic. I mean, I on my our first wedding anniversary, we went to Dogfish Head. Um, stayed in their inn, like did the whole like experience, and we did a tour of the brewery, and the tour guide said like, if you like all our beers, you're probably lying. Like there's no way, like, because we do a lot of different styles, and we get experimental, and like some stuff doesn't land, and plus yeah, people have different taste buds. Like and it was just, I'm like, wow, a brewery admitting that all their beers aren't going to be home runs to every person who drinks them. Like talk about honesty, and like it just, and like we were talking about before, I mean, if you're a brewery, I would hope you would want the honest feedback, and take constructive criticism, which is different than just someone being a jerk just to be a jerk, but like an honest criticism. And again, like you were saying, I mean, people's palates are different. So to you, it might have been lemon cleaning product, and to other person might be like, this is exact level of lemon I want in this beer, and like that's fine, and neither person is wrong. Um, I mean, my profession, I get, evaluations and critiques and stuff. And sometimes I get it. They can seem like, and then sometimes it's like, no, like that's a good thing. Like, you're right. I didn't think of that, or I didn't view it that way, or I could improve there. And that's okay. Like as long as it's not like an unnecessarily harsh thing just to be a jerk, you should be able to hopefully, especially if it's your business, like you should want to do better. And again, that's what's made it very easy for me. I don't get a lot of beer sent to me from breweries, but the ones I do, that's what they always talk about. They're like, we want your honest feedback. Like, there's no pressure. There's no like, you better keep saying nice things or we're not sending it to you. It's always like, no, this is like the quality check is awesome that you do. Like, that's what we want. And that's really rad. Yeah.
Do you think that, no offense to mine or your audience, do you think that general beer drinkers are, what's the word? Like underinformed, undereducated? Like, do you like, so like we mentioned earlier in our conversation about like somebody being like, oh, I don't like this style, 1 star or whatever. I follow an Instagram, page. What, I don't know what it's called on Instagram. I'm fucking old, but
We'll call it a page. I have no idea. Profile?
it, it's called Untapped WTF, and I see a lot of people do stuff like that. And do you think that there is a divide between in knowledge and information amongst people who want to be like craft beer people, like what I'm talking about, people who like define themselves as craft beer people versus like what the reality of like beer is, especially for the reason I ask you this is because you're somebody who's 1,000 beer reviews, like you're gonna rack up that knowledge and information and like for a variety of different styles. Do you think you're kind of like the middleman? Do you think there is a disparity?
That's a cool question. Yeah, I mean, there's people who don't know a lot about whatever topic, and specifically here beer. I wonder how many of those people though then watch beer reviews. I mean, some maybe to like learn more. Some people like I used to work with, for example, like, oh, this is cool. Like I watch your channel sometimes, and like I kind of learn things. And a woman I very briefly worked with, just the other day, she like sent a picture to me. She goes, yeah, this beer, I didn't like it. We didn't get these notes. And I'm like, oh, it's cool. I've never had that beer. I'm like, oh, wow, like that's happening. So like I could see someone who doesn't know a lot trying to learn and use it for that reason. But like someone who doesn't know a lot who's then going to like disparage me for my thoughts seems odd. I don't know. Like I also, and I'm glad you brought this up. I didn't think of this topic. I probably come across more into craft beer than I am. Like I am into it. I do have a beer a day, but like I'm way more into like comedy or like I mean history since I teach it, or like like I that stuff I actually think about more than I think about beer. But because I do this, I probably have at least slightly, maybe I'm being too modest, but like slightly more information. But like I also couldn't. I'm not a cicerone, so I couldn't like tell you the whole process front to back either. So like and again, like going back to the other question about like possible reasons I might have had decent growth for how long I've been doing this for. I'm not pretentious, because that doesn't have to be pretentious, but it can come across as pretentious. I don't think I come across pretentiously. I don't think I come across like an idiot either. I think I'm somewhere in that middle ground where I have some information. I also make mistakes. I'm accessible while maybe teaching a little bit or potentially teaching a little bit. This is an interesting thing that's thought provoking for me. So I don't have a lot of other thoughts right now, but I will be thinking about this off camera. I'll say that much.
So, with that being said, do you think that there is a role for beer reviewers, beer YouTubers, stuff like that, to be that middle ground educator to the newcomer? Like, so if you're talking, all right, let's just use this beer for example, right? It's a Centennial IPA, right? Like, as a beer, YouTuber, you know what IPA means, you know what Centennial means, right? Somebody who's coming into that, they might not know. Like, do you think there is a significant role for beer reviewers to teach people what those terms mean?
Not to sound like a cop out, yes and no. I mean, yeah, like so if I was going to review that or if I was going to review that beer for video, I'm probably not spending the time explaining what an IPA is, a whole overly hop to, sit on a ship, et cetera, et cetera. This, story that gets told a lot. But I might explain like, oh yeah, so this is single hop with Centennial. So this is kind of a cool experience because it's only Centennial. So all the things I'm getting besides the malt notes and potential alcohol taste is what that one hop is giving me. So it might be kind of a cool thing. Like, so I might kind of delve into that. It probably depends on the approach the person's taking in the video. Are they trying to be more explanation versus just this is what I'm tasting? I'm probably more into the tasting than the educational piece. Yeah, this is interesting.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think there's I mean, this might be a cool niche for anybody watching who wants to get into a unique channel, but like beer tutorial, instructions, guidance, whatever through reviews, that might be interesting. But me personally, I do believe that there are. I mean, yeah, like you said, you don't mention like what the whole history and purpose and style guidelines for an IPA is or whatever. But I think through context clues, through your beer reviews, people are able to be like, okay, so IPA, big hop notes, maybe some alcohol, whatever. I don't know. That's something I literally just thought about on the spot. I wasn't cooking that idea, but it.
Because you're right, though. You might be like, this is a little maltier than a lot of the IPAs I've been drinking lately. Like it's a little, then you might then say like it's a little sweeter. I get a little like doughy quality, but then I am getting this citrus wave coming. Like as you're explaining it, you might unintentionally actually, yeah, be educating. Okay, so when I drink an IPA, am I looking for this doughy thing that they mentioned, or am I not wanting that thing, or does it depend on if it's an IPA, a double IPA, a triple IPA, a pale ale? Yeah, but yeah, I will say it's not a goal of mine unless I'm making a specific video like, here's what vegetal means if that's said in a review or whatever, which I don't make those videos, but
Yo, that's a good video idea for me.
no, but like
You're feeding me full of ideas.
no, it's good. Take these ideas. I'm not making these videos. Take these ideas. Like years ago, a friend of mine, he's a big beer guy, but his wife at work was gifted one of those like wine tasting kits where like this is what bitter means. And then like you go to sour, then you kind of learn like what's the difference between bitter and sour. So like we went over to their house and we did all these, however many of these little tasting things there were. That was really cool. So I could see a cool, I don't want to call it a market, but like a niche, whatever, where like, yeah, someone just kind of says like, okay, so this is what I mean by bitter, and this is how that's different than something like a sour. Um, Explaining what, when you say citrus, you want to be more specific. Is it more zesty citrus or juicy citrus? Do you mean lemon and lime versus grapefruit and orange? Like that might be kind of cool. Yeah.
That's a pet peeve of mine in the beer review world. Like,
If someone said citrus or what?
yeah. So, I mean, all right, I get it. Sometimes there's like ambiguous, muddled citrus tones, right? But I want them to tell me that. I want them to tell me that it's ambiguous, muddled, or whatever. If someone's like citrus, I'm like, dope. Is that a Buddha's hand? Is that a Kefir lime? There's There's an entire Wikipedia page dedicated to citrus fruits. I know because I've looked at it. Like, what are we talking about?
Well, and then okay, so to pivot off of that, like okay, I haven't had a guava in a while. So like I'll see like a description maybe that says like you're gonna get notes of guava. The last time I had it, it was dried and in a trail mix. So like that's probably not the best way for me to try to recall it.
Yeah, but see, that's the cool thing because dried. All right, so another anecdotal story. There's a brewery in Virginia called Licking Hole Creek,
Yeah, I've
and
had it
every
other
year,
breweries, actually.
yeah, they're okay. I don't mind them. They have a thing called Despot Day, and that's their big stout release day. They have little like 5 to 10 gallon kegs that they tap on the hour, and it's a variant. Like every year, it's like 6 or so different variants,
Okay.
only in that small batch, right? They had one that was dried fruit variant, right? And I can't remember what the fruits were now, but I'm pretty sure it was things like apples, pears, stuff like that. And you could taste that, but it didn't taste the same way, you know. And that as like what like you would expect an apple beer or a pear beer to taste like. So that's just one of my things that
Yeah.
I feel like I'm getting off topic here, but that is a pet peeve of mine.
It's
When I watch beer reviewers, I want that clarity. Tell me,
you want to
what type of fruit are you tasting?
yeah, because no, and citrus is a perfect example. I mean, like apple, like sometimes I can hone in on green apple, like a Granny Smith, but like apple might be a little bit harder. Like I get a Macintosh apple, I probably couldn't pull that, but like Granny Smith, I could. Whereas citrus, a navel orange, a grapefruit, a lemon, and a lime, at least those four are different enough where you could specify for me. But like, so I do try to be mindful not to use things that I don't know what they taste like. But then there's also this weird thing where you might be tasting something. I forget what beer it was. It wasn't that long ago. Where I'm like, it kind of tastes like rope. I haven't put rope in my mouth since I was probably a child, but like it totally brought me to that moment of like being a kid and like you're just like, oh, is this something I taste? You know? So like I don't know, 30 years ago was probably the last time I did that, you know, but like it brought me back to that moment. But am I remembering what that tastes like from 30 years ago? But like for whatever reason, because you know, sense of smell,
You probably are. There's
it's strong link.
there's a study I just read not too long ago that says taste and smell are they're the senses that we remember the most. So that's really fucking cool.
Yeah.
Sorry, I don't mean to keep cussing on this. In
So
case
I
any of
could
your
care less. But
okay.
the other thing though too is like so going back to that guava. So like it does put in my mind though, like okay, like all these people are saying guava, or like the brewers are saying there's notes of guava in this beer. I'm like, I should get a guava. Like I should kind of like re up what that you know. And I couldn't find a guava. So this literally was like last week at the grocery store. I couldn't find a guava, so I ended up buying a kombucha that had guava in it, and I kind of know what that tastes like without the guava to kind of hone in. Hopefully, so like going forward, again being authentic, so I feel more confident and comfortable saying I do get the notes of guava they're talking about, or you know what, I don't get them. You know, like just to be able
That's
to
so cool.
comment on that and do it authentically versus just I'm just pulling out of my butt like, oh yeah, no, I totally get guava.
That goes back to that honest broker stuff I was talking about. Like that, in my opinion, I think that is probably one of the reasons why people are so hooked on your channel. It's because that's the type of honest broker stuff that I don't think I don't think a lot of other beer reviewers are doing. I think a lot of other beer reviewers are not worried. I mean, I think they had maybe a guava in their past life, or maybe they read on a blog or something that this tastes like guava. You know, maybe that's like, oh, well, oh yeah, guava.
Yeah,
You know,
we're talking about this off camera, but like, not these are not exact numbers, but like, how many people do beer reviews? I'm probably familiar with, I don't know, 8 of them. I don't know what the number is, but like, and I'm probably drawn to the ones who are a little bit more on the up and up. I'll say that. I'll leave it at that. I'll leave it at that. I don't even start drama with people I don't even know.
fair enough. All right, Kyle. I mean, this was great.
It was a lot of fun. Yeah,
I really enjoyed this conversation. This
so
was
did I.
This is probably one of my favorite interviews I've done. I mean, this was good.
This was like, yeah, this is mutual. This was a lot of fun on my end. We're recording this on a Friday, so like it's like the end of my work week and stuff. This was a really nice way to kind of end my work week. This was awesome.
Yeah,
I really enjoyed it.
This is a good end cap. So, real quick, please shout out anywhere, anything people can follow you, find you, whatever you want to advertise, please.
No, appreciate it. Yeah, I keep it pretty simple. It's just No Hype Beer Reviews at YouTube, Instagram, and Untapped. No Hype Beer Reviews at all 3 places.
Nice. Well, thank you very much for joining me. This has been a ton of fun. Hopefully I can have you on again sometime in the future. We can talk about some more crazy stuff.
That'd be awesome.
Yeah, man. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Anthony. Seriously, I appreciate it. This was a lot of fun on my end, too.